Hey, what's up? This is Pastor Brian from Chapel of Change, and we are excited to have Tommy Urban D with us today. God bless you, my brother.
What's up, man? It's good to be here, bro.
Hey, thanks for he brought the Flavorfest to Chapel of Change, Los Angeles, and
Yes.
we're actually right before the concert right now. Brian Trejo, a bunch of other artists, just a meaningful time, urban leader development, and he's the founder of Flavorfest, right?
Yeah. Started it now 24 years ago, bro.
24 years?
Yeah, year
Bro,
2000.
that is legacy right there. It's
Yeah.
almost as old as me.
Yeah, next year we're going to be our 25-year anniversary.
Boy, we got to go
bro.
really, really big.
It's going to be big next year, yeah.
Wow. So what prompted you to start Flavorfest?
Yeah, man. Well, we started it back in the year 2000. Reason was I came out with my first national album as Urban D, Urban Disciple. My first album, that's what the D is for. And it was in stores because back then, only place you could get music was in stores. We didn't have streaming, right? So inside of the CD cover, I was youth pastor at the time, full-time youth pastor in an urban context. I had a picture of all the kids behind me, and my youth leaders, about 200 people in the picture, and a little paragraph under there talking about our urban youth ministry, the concerts, the hip-hop concerts, basketball league, breakdancing classes, graffiti classes, MC classes, and just how God was touching all these unchurched kids. These kids weren't from our church. They were from the community because we only had a little handful of people coming to the church. There was no kids to come from the church. So it was amazing what God was doing, but suddenly we started to get all these people calling us and emailing us and visiting us because people go to Florida on vacation. They're like, we're going to Disney and Urban D's church. So as a result of that, we just said, you know what? Let's put a weekend on where we can invite people to come. We could do workshops. We could do an outreach and show them how we do an outreach in excellence. We do a concert at the church in the evening in excellence and just see our facility and how everything's set up. And so that's how it was birthed, man.
Wonderful.
November of 2000.
Now, didn't you used to do a magazine? And what was
We
that
did.
called again?
It was called Soul Mag, which stood for Speaking on Urban Life. And so it was a magazine that then even morphed into a magazine and a TV show. And your guy that's filming this here right now, the podcast, you told me he used to watch, it on Juice TV when he was in
Yes.
prison.
You were reaching him while he was in prison,
amazing.
Corcoran SHU, which is high level in California, murderers and killers. Who knows how many more people you reached?
Yeah. We used to regularly get a lot of letters from people in prison that were saying they watched this and just people that needed somebody to write to. And so, literally, we probably get at least half a dozen different letters every month from different people around the country that were watching us. And we had a few people in the church. I would respond to some of them, but it started to get to be a lot. So some of them I would give to different people in the church that wanted to write and have a pen pal and encourage someone. So it was really cool.
So our church, Chapel of Change, is in the urban context, South Los Angeles area. We have 4 campuses.
Yeah.
This campus is right across the street from Compton,
Yeah.
5 blocks away from Long Beach. A lot of people ask me at different workshops, what are some of the unique challenges of ministering to people in the urban context? How would you answer that in your Florida, Tampa Bay?
Yeah.
Tampa Bay context.
Yeah, so we're right in the city, and we're in a pretty tough community as well. The nickname used to be Suitcase City because it was so transient. We're trying to rebrand it now. It's an innovation district, and there is a lot of redevelopment that's happening. It's called Uptown now. That's the rebranding of it. But there's a lot of work to do, a lot of needs. And so at the end of the day, I'd say like any urban community across the country has in common, they all have unique things to them. But what we have in common is there's more problems and there's less resources. There's more people that have needs and they're struggling and they're going through stuff. And yet there's less resources, less funding, less leaders to be able to kind of fill in those gaps. And so in urban ministry, I've found, doing it for 28 years now, I know you've been doing it for a minute as well, is everything takes more time. We see, in mainstream, urban Christianity, not urban, but mainstream American Christianity, we see churches that sometimes blow up. They got thousands of people coming. Like in the urban context, it takes time because we got to make disciples and people are coming from so much baggage and bondage, and it takes time. But man, it's beautiful when you stay and you're consistent and you watch guys, even like this guy right here, I'm super excited to meet, that's been at your church now for almost 11 years and just being discipled and growing and serving and giving back. And that's the thing that's so rewarding, man.
You know, I remember first meeting you, I think it was probably about 14 years ago in
Yeah.
Dallas Leadership Network, kind of a multi-ethnic group.
Mm-hmm.
That was before we had actually launched our church, Chapel of Change.
Yeah, you were still at Light and Life.
Yes,
Yeah.
shout out to Light and Life, Pastor Larry Walkemeyer, now Sean and Joel.
Yeah, my
And
guys.
so when you started off Christian hip hop to nowadays Christian hip hop, what are some of the differences that you see?
Man, that's a good question. So when I started getting into it, was in the 90s. And in the 90s...
You're like a triple OG, by the way, 90s?
Yeah, man. Well, my album came out, my national album came out in 99, so I'm right on the tail end of it. But before me, it was predominantly like testimony rap. You had T-Bone, you had Gospel Gangsters, you had PID, you had which stood for Preachers in Disguise, and just a lot of their music, the lyrics were mostly about their testimony, which was great. It was awesome. I was inspired by that. And then around the late 90s, around 1998, a group from Philadelphia came out called the Cross Movement. You might remember them. And they were kind of almost like the Christian Wu-Tang. It was a big squad of them, East Coast, very lyrical, very theological. And so for about the next decade, Christian hip-hop kind of shifted because whoever's like making the most noise and selling the most albums, kind of a lot of people just naturally follow suit of that style or that formula, right? So Cross Movement now was kind of like the standard. And so many other artists were imitating that style. Rap became a lot more Christ-centric, theological, rapping about scripture, and there were several other labels that came out. And there was always some people doing some different stuff, but that was the most popular during that time. Then that changed around 2007, 2008. The baton was kind of passed when Cross Movement retired. And some of them did solo albums, but they, as a group, they retired. And the baton really got passed then to a guy that was on their label that was really blowing up with a new sound from the South, which was popular, and that was Lecrae. Lecrae was, from Houston, Texas at the time, and he just had this more like Southern sound that was kind of popping at that time. And he was mentored and discipled by the Cross Movement, so he had a very theological blend as well, but it leaned more on Reformed theology. And so then Christian hip-hop got very reformed for that next little season from probably about 2008 to 2012. Everybody was into Reformed theology and Calvinism, and they're, putting samples of Paul Washer and John Piper, and if you weren't into that, wearing like these shirts with old theologians on them, then you weren't cool. And it was just funny to watch how it shifted. And it did cause a lot of division because then some people were in different camps theologically. They weren't talking to each other, weren't working together. And it was like, man. But then in 2012, there was a big shift because Lecrae suddenly felt like, man, God's calling me to reach the mainstream. And he dropped Church Clothes. And the content on Church Clothes was very different than what his other stuff was. That was very, like Reformed theology type stuff. And it did well. But he did have a lot of fans that were like, oh, man, I missed the old. There was some people beefing. I missed the old Lecrae, But God really opened up a bunch of doors. And his, brand of, CHH grew and took off. And so kind of like his pinnacle was probably the Anomaly album, which was around 2014, 2015. He was selling out tours, thousands of people coming. And some of the other artists on his label, like Andy Mineo, same thing. And so Christian hip-hop became very outreach-oriented, and the message about Jesus, it was still there, but it wasn't as blatant and theological and Christ-centric as it had been maybe the previous decade or so. It kind of took on a new thing, so then everybody was imitating that style again, and to be real with you, for a season there, it went so far left that then there was a lot of Christian rappers that weren't even saying anything about God, hardly at all. You had to almost decipher it to find it. It was positive music, but it was,
Yes.
So, but then it's now shifting again the last 4 or 5 years, and it's kind of going back to having that Christian message and being balanced. And
let me, you just gave us
I
a
give the whole history lesson. There it
class,
is,
bro. That was amazing what you did. So
Yeah.
maybe you teach that somewhere. I don't know, but you
Yeah,
just
I've
gave
shared
us
it a few times before.
Well,
But
you need to
yeah.
capture that. They need
Yeah.
to teach that in college or some of these workshops. Anyways, but that was amazing.
Thank you.
I want something more controversial. This is me a personal.
Okay.
Is NF a Christian rapper?
So if you asked NF if he was a Christian rapper, and people have before, he would say no. I'm just a rapper. But I'm a Christian, or he would say he leans towards
Did he
Christian.
start off as we understand a Christian rapper?
He did.
He did.
He did. So if you know some of his history, he was doing some stuff with Flame, and
yes.
he has some earlier songs. You can even find them online. I don't think he has them on his YouTube, but on some other YouTube channels, I know there's a total song he did about Jesus, and he was very Christian hip hop in the very beginning. He even like sang a song with Flame. I can hear the song in my head right now. I can't remember the name of it. I see the music video too, where they're like kind of in the Grand Canyon, and NF is singing the hook on
I
it,
think
and
I know
Flames
that.
rapping.
Start all over? I don't
Yep,
know.
yes, it
Does
is.
it start
We
all
can
over?
start
Yeah, all
over.
over.
Dun,
Yeah,
yeah.
my kids be bumping that.
Yeah, man. So that was NF singing on the hook. I didn't
Yeah,
even know
it
NF
was.
was a rapper
Right.
because I just heard him sing on that. I'm like, oh, this is I thought it was like some CCM
Yeah.
white Christian artist that was like singing on the hook for Flame, And so, but then like a few years later, I heard this NF song. I forget what it was called, but it was like a music video, and the background was all white, and he was just going in like lyrically, like a young Eminem, and I was like, "Yo, who is this dude?" And then like I was able to make the connection. Someone's like, "Oh, that's NF. He used to do stuff with Flame." I'm like, "Oh wait, that was that dude that sang the hook on that song," and like now he's this like amazing lyrical rapper that does sound a lot like Eminem, but I mean, he's from that exact area of the country. And so he blew up, but he got signed to Capitol, and he wasn't as a Christian artist. He was just, I'm a rapper. Now, his stuff was positive, it was clean. He didn't curse or anything like that. He would mention God a little bit
But he
here
has a
and
lot
there.
of downers. Like
He's very-
he's
music
very
is very-
gifted and anointed.
it's very
that I would-
dark.
It's dark.
It's
like,
dark, and it
I would
doesn't
bump-
give you, yeah, it
I would
doesn't give you
bump
the
it
answer.
in my car, and I'd bump because it's anointed and
Yeah.
it's attractive. But after a while, I'm like, dude, this is like, I'm not trying to be like sad.
Yeah.
All
But
the
his
time.
latest album was called Hope.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And it kind of like shifted, and the music video on the very first song is almost like a battle with him battling against the old self. And he was like, I'm done with you. I'm 30. He's 30 now. And so he raps about that in there. At the end, he does this whole thing. He's like, 30 years, boom, 30 years. And there's like, he's battling between like this darker side of him and this side that's like, no, I'm going to go after hope. And so it's not blatantly like Christian now, but it's definitely leaning to be more positive.
Who would you say are some
Yeah.
of the up and rising current Christian hip hop artists that are kind of like breaking through right now?
Yeah, I would absolutely say Miles Minnick.
Miles Minnick.
Just as we're sitting here right now, last night he was at the Novo, downtown LA, like an iconic spot that Christian hip hop doesn't go there. And like he packed it out. And it was amazing. I'm so proud of him. He's on a tour right now. He's a great entrepreneur. He's got his own clothing line, Christ-like, and just doing some great stuff. He's been at Flavorfest the last couple years. He did the Flavorfest tour
What is
with
his
us.
style? Like, I'm not into knowing different styles,
Yeah.
but it appears to me like he's almost I don't want to say like childlikeness.
Yeah.
But what is his style? How would you describe?
Yeah,
his
I mean,
style?
I would say like, well, he's from the West Coast, so he's got that West Coast flavor to him, but it's not the traditional West Coast like the West Coast guys of 20 years ago or more. It's very current. It's very appealing to the next generation, the young generation. I mean, Miles is around 30-ish as well, like an NF, but he looks younger. I thought he was younger than that. And but man, he definitely appeals to that teen, young adult crowd. And the music's very current, very hype, very like, man, chants, and the whole crowd goes crazy. But yet it's very Christ-centered. And at every one of his events, this is why if Miles is watching this or anybody that's a Miles fan, man, he does ministry. And that was void in Christian hip hop concerts and tours for a good chunk of the last decade. That's shifted in the last couple of years now to where it's coming back to that. Praise God. Because I believe if you're going to do a concert and share your music, man, you need to share the gospel and give people an opportunity to get prayed for and respond. And he's about that. He does altar calls and stuff, and people respond.
My two daughters went last night, and I could say they were learning about Jesus as they were singing his song.
Yeah,
So I can attest
beautiful.
to that. Let me ask you this. What do you think some of the differences between a Miles Minnick and a Brian Trail.
Yeah.
You kind of like a hip hop historian. So I asked that from that point of view.
Yeah.
You know, you're this professional in this space,
Yeah.
and you earned that. So what is
Yeah.
your professional kind
Yeah,
of?
man, I love both of them. And I think Brian is very much like Miles in the content. It's very Christ centered, very in your face, unashamed. Whereas we had a season in CHH where it was a little more hidden and creatively, like, I'm Christian, but I'm talking about all this other stuff. Like, man, both of them are very much in your face with the message, with the gospel, but still in an artistic, creative way. I think the difference is Miles is younger. I think appealing even more to the next generation a little bit, and versus like Brian is a little more testimony based, and he just has a gift to reach. I think a lot of people that are in the street culture, in the gang culture. I know, like out here in Cali, man, like people love Brian T. Because he comes from that background, and
Shout out to Brian T.
yeah, man, and he does. I know he goes to a lot of the Victory Outreach churches where you got
comes to Chapel of Change,
Yep,
too.
Chapel of Change. You guys kind of fit in that same like
No, are
Victory
you
Outreach
serious?
vibe. I
No
would just
way.
say, well, you
Nah.
guys got a lot of like OGs and former
Okay.
gangsters like this guy right here.
Okay.
And I think that Brian, being with his background, his testimony, he really can touch that group of people, man. And so yeah, they're both unique, similar in some ways, but definitely different.
Okay. Who's like a third, someone I'm not even thinking about that's probably breaking through right now? Who would you
Yeah.
say?
Man, there's a whole tribe of, so there's, of course, Reach Records has some artists that are coming up that are bubbling, Hovey and some of these other guys. And rap is changing now. There's a lot of singing involved. So like a Hovey, he raps, but he also sings. NF raps, but he also sings. There's an R&B tour. The first one I've even heard of in the Christian hip hop R&B realm. There's an R&B tour happening this summer because there's all these guys that are singers. And they might rap a little bit or it's rhythmic, but they've gotten so big on TikTok and Instagram that they have all these followers. They're doing a tour. So another one I'd say would be like there's a guy named Caleb Gordon, young guy from Orlando that is just blowing up in the past year. He just had a reel April 19th. I was just looking at this the other day. So this reel was fairly recently. It has almost 20 million views on it.
Wow.
And I mean, his IG account now has over 500,000 followers. And just like, a year or two ago, it was relatively small. So like he just sold out a couple concerts as well.
So going back to Miles Minnick in that same vein, what does that mean for a Christian hip hop artist to sell out the Novo?
It's huge.
Like, is that, what is
huge. Stuff like that has rarely been done before. I mean, Reach Records was doing that for a season in different secular venues. Lecrae was doing that. I don't think he ever came to the Novo though, but I think it just shows the world that, like, man, this music, there's a crowd and an audience for it that will support it. And so that's, I think, Miles, if you watch some of his IG, he was like, come on, guys, we got to support, we got to show the world. Really, I think his mindset, he's about souls, but he's about like, man, I want us to be in even bigger places so the world notices us and is drawn to see what's going on. And then they can be pulled into this thing and Jesus can get a hold of them.
Awesome. Man, thanks for, you just you laced us up on some Christian hip hop history. One last thing, Pastor Tommy. A lot of people watch our broadcasts and maybe they're far from Christ. Maybe the streets have broken them. Maybe they're in jail. The cameraman was listening to you from jail.
Yeah.
I know that brother was shot by the police in the face, etc. What would you say to somebody, and you could just look at the camera over there, somebody who's far from Christ, what would you say to them in our closing?
Yeah, I would say to you out there that from me, when I had my rebellious season and I was far from God, even though I grew up in church and knew about God, as I'm sure probably many of you watching this, if you're far from God right now, you might have some history, some background. I just felt like, man, if I give my life to God fully, I'm gonna have to change everything. I'm not gonna be who I am. Now, granted, I knew that I was gonna have to give up some things like my sinful habits and some of the things I was doing. And I was ready to give some of those things up because I knew those things were destroying my life. They were destructive and I was down the wrong path. But I was nervous to say like, man, if I give my life to God, then I'm going to have to like dress differently, talk differently, listen to different music. I'm going to lose some of my personality, my identity. And that's when I soon found out, like, God spoke to me through a variety of different things to be like, no, I customized you to be exactly who you are with your life experiences, your backgrounds, your passions, your preferences, your personality, all those things I customize for you to be exactly who you are, but now use all those things for my glory and to reach other people for me. And so for me as a kid from Philly, you know, growing up, like the generation before me at my church was very traditional. And so I thought I was going to have to like put on a suit and tie and start listening to choir music and wear khaki pants and just, hey, brother, you know, and I just, and God was like, no, I want you to be you. Use hip hop, use fashion, use your testimony, use your background, use your story to reach people that are like you. So whoever you are, if you're watching this right now, whatever your background is, like God has created you, customized you. Like Ephesians 2:10 is our theme for Flavorfest this year. You're a masterpiece, created anew in Christ Jesus to do good works that were planned long ago. God's customized you. Nobody has your DNA or your fingerprint on this planet. You're not one in a million. You're 1 in 8 billion. You're one of a kind. You're an original. And God has amazing things for you to do. So submit your life to Him. Surrender. Give Him everything. And then let Him use you. And watch what happens, y'all. It'll be amazing. Don't hold back.
Hey, this is Pastor Brian and Tommy Urban D. Hit like and subscribe this video. But Pastor Tommy just released a book. What was the name of that again? It Gotta Be the Shoes?
Yeah, it's called Gotta Be the Shoes, where sneaker culture meets faith. And here's the thing, for anybody out there that's watching this, you can get a copy of the book for free. I'm so passionate to get it out to people. If you go to freeshoesbook.com, you could get a free copy of it. Comes with a masterclass. And I'll even throw in a copy of my other book that came out right before it. It's called Frames. It's about perspective. So you get 2 books, 2 master classes, totally for free. I'm not charging anything for it. I'm not taking any money from it. All you have to do is pay for the shipping. I own the books, but I don't own the post office. So
there it is.
So yeah, just freeshoesbook.com. Check it out.
There it is. God bless you.